Hello friends, this is Growl. In this video, I'm going to go over my first impressions of Mistweaver Monk for Mythic Plus and Dragonflight. Mistweaver is one of the specs I'm most excited for after seeing the release of the talent trees. Now that I got to play with it a bit on beta, I definitely wasn't disappointed. Mistweaver has a ton of new tools to work with, both for fist weaving and casting. Personally, I think that melee healers are meant to be played in melee, so this video is going to cover the melee focused talents of the tree. There are some options for caster stuff, however, I think it's a mistake to lose out on those melee abilities just because you prefer to stay at range. That being said, if that is your preferred playstyle, Dragonflight definitely caters to you better than the last two expansions by actually giving you some good options that can boost your throughput. You can play a caster Mistweaver if you choose to, even if it isn't optimal. The biggest change in the fist weaving playstyle is definitely Feline Stomp. This was an ability brought back from Shadowlands, but very much improved. Whenever you use Feline Stomp, you also trigger the Ancient Teachings passive, which grants you healing based off of the damage you do. This means you don't have to constantly reapply Essence Font just to keep the buff active. On top of that, your Blackout Kick and Spinning Crane Kick are both improved with further talents. Blackout Kick cleaves onto multiple targets while in the Feline, and your Spinning Crane Kick also heals in it. This means not only are you doing improved damage, but you're putting out solid healing without having to sacrifice DPS on large numbers of targets. Mistweaver's AoE DPS has been significantly improved with this change, and you're back to spinning to win. On the class tree, Mistweaver has a lot of cool different options depending on the playstyle and dungeon. One thing to note is that you can get so many defensive options. Fort Brew, Diffuse, Dampen, and Healing Elixir can all be taken at the same time. You also get Touch of Death cooldown reduction alongside White Tiger Statue and Resonant Fist, which give you a lot of solid DPS options, further pushing Mistweaver up to be more competitive with some of the other healers. If DPS isn't your thing, you can go along the healing side to buff healing on low HP allies, as well as improving Expel Harm to the point that you may actually want to press it. The Mistweaver spec tree has so many incredibly powerful nodes for increasing your healing. Alongside the Feline Stomp and Ancient Teachings combo, there's pretty much every other talent that you'd want too. Rising Mist returns to extend your HOTS, Focus Thunder you can take with Rising Mist, there's also Upwelling, and even Secret Infusion from BFA is back. You can also choose to build around your Celestial, either making it a really strong 3-minute cooldown or a slightly weaker 1-minute cooldown. Then, in further talents, you can boost your haste every time you activate it, similar to the legendary. The only weak point in the tree, in my opinion, is Bone Dust Brew. I was never really a fan of Bone Dust in Shadowlands, and seeing it back is a bit of a disappointment. Mistweaver already has incredibly strong healing to allies who are stacked together in melee, so Bone Dust ends up being kind of overkill. That being said, it's only 2 points wasted in the tree, which is better than most other healing specs for Mythic Plus. One last addition that's cool is Zen Pulse. It's an ability you can use around yourself or an ally, gives them a heal, and also does a burst of AoE damage around them. This is a cool ability to use because it gives you some extra AoE damage even when you're not able to get in melee. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm mostly talking about the melee-centric playstyle for Mistweaver in this overview. It's what I played, and it's what you should probably expect to play in Mythic Plus. There are a lot of talents that buff Soothing Mist to build some sort of caster build. However, simply going through the dungeon not pressing your Rising Sun Kick or Spinning Crane Kick seems like a mistake to me. As I mentioned also in my Paladin video, it's a plus if you enjoy caster Mistweaver because you have so many talent nodes that you can pick that'll boost your output. So don't be disappointed that I'm so focused on the melee side of it. I'm just a cat with a waffle on his head. I mean, I can only do so much. The Mistweaver tier set for Season 1 is actually incredibly simple. It just buffs your healing on targets with Renewing Mist, and then extends those mists when you give them direct heals. With Fist Weaving, you're already extending Renewing Mist to its max most of the time, but the bonus healing is nice. You don't really play around this set in M+, but it will be a strong HPS gain once you collect the full set. So with all this new stuff, how exactly did it feel to play? In my personal opinion, they made a huge improvement on the Mistweaver playstyle. They kept true to the fist weaving rotation while giving you some more talent options to improve your damage and compete with some of the other healers. If melee isn't your thing, they also added tons of range-based talents so you don't feel like there's only one viable option and your talent points aren't being wasted. I had a lot of fun with the new Mistweaver, and it was right up there with Paladin in fun levels in my opinion. Wait a second, how did I even get this far without mentioning instant cast Vivify? Every 10 seconds you gain a buff that your next Vivify is instant cast. This cleans up the Mistweaver rotation so much. Very often when you're fist weaving, the shorter range and lack of smart healing leaves one of your teammates low. Having to stop and then cast on them really sucks and kind of makes the rotation feel clunky. Now with the instant cast Vivify procs, you have a lot of flexibility to throw out that Vivify on targets who need it while still staying on the move and getting in position. Generally speaking, you shouldn't just be spamming Vivify that often, so having a free instant cast every 10 seconds comes pretty close to having it instant cast all the time. Although it's looking really fun and some problems are fixed, I still had two main beefs with the spec. The improvement to Phaline gives them reasonable AoE damage to compete with other healers, however, the single target damage is still a little bit lacking. It's true that they bring the increased physical damage debuff, but you do need to have a mostly physical-centric team that doesn't have a Windwalker to make it useful. I don't think it's that far off, and it is nice that a lot of the Mistweaver damage is passive, so you can deal it while you're healing. But even compared to a healer like Disc Priest, you just aren't doing as much, and then Disc Priest also has PI. Then you try and stack it up against something like Druid or Evoker, and you're starting to fall pretty far behind. The other issue was its burst AoE healing. Mistweaver feels amazing against sustained heavy rot damage because you can fist weave, you can stack up tons of heal over time on your party while being super mana efficient. A lot of the bosses in Dragonflight though don't seem to be that style of rot fight. Several of the bosses are just really heavy bursts of damage over 5 to 10 seconds. Mistweaver's healing kit just doesn't seem to do the job compared to some of the other healers. I think this is mainly because Revival is such a weak cooldown in 5-mans. Your Celestial can be good, but that's about all you have. I don't suspect this will be a problem for most players though. I mean, this is like very, very high keys that you'll start to run into those problems in super tough tyrannical fights. That's when I think Mistweaver may start to struggle. I've gotten a lot of flack saying that I'm just not a Mistweaver expert and if I played it right I can heal these bosses, but I've been looking around different streams and trying to see people push higher keys and I just haven't seen anyone able to do it. It's definitely a problem that Mistweaver hasn't been super popular in several years. It's just because there's not many top healers testing it and pushing it to its limits. I could be maybe wrong here, but I just think it isn't the strongest at dealing with some of the harder boss fights that I've tested this expansion. That being said, Mistweaver is still in a much better spot than it's been in a long time. The HPS output is great, its DPS is improving, and you get several new talents and gameplay elements to think about. Maybe with some strong trinkets or a buff to Revival, I could see Mistweaver becoming a really solid healer. I don't want to scare you off the class by saying I'm worried about its healing, because personally it handles most situations fine and I think it's very fun. Compared to classes like Shaman or Holy Priest, you just have so much more mobility and crowd control that fighting pack to pack just feels a lot more fluid. If the fist weaving playstyle is something you enjoy, I think you'll be more than happy with Dragonflight Mistweaver. Will it be the #1 world first key pushing meta healer? I wouldn't count on it. That wraps up my thoughts on Mistweaver for healing Mythic Plus and Dragonflight. Although I only covered one playstyle of fist weaving in Mythic Plus, I hope this helps you if you're wondering about the state of the class or considering playing it in the expansion. If you're looking for more Dragonflight Mythic Plus content, definitely subscribe to the channel. I'll be posting regularly up until and through the launch. I'm hoping to reach 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Good luck with your healing adventures and happy keying, friends.